Chavrusa Daf.
Welcome. Okay, we are going to try to do Shabbos' daf and Sunday's daf all in one.
Something that's never been done before in a Chavrusa Daf.
Right, but they're very short dafim. So we're going to start on the bottom of Chaf Hey. We're going to try to take down 26, or lift up, 26 and 27. Chaf Vav and Chaf Zayin.
I know you wanted to go fast without distractions, but in the beginning of every NFL game, they always say, okay, they talk about the jerseys, or wearing the home jersey, the away jersey.
Yeah.
So me and Ali are both wearing white T-shirts with zip-ups. I'm wearing a gray zip-up. Ali's wearing a black zip-up. His white T-shirt says the walk, run. We've seen this one before. This is not
Let's see
new.
the picture. Let's see the picture.
Oh,
They're looking at the picture right now.
1,000 words.
If we remember to take it.
Okay.
We already lost a minute on that. Thanks, Binyomin. Notice I took out the Reb because he was battling. The Gemara returns to Rabbi Yochanan's statement. The bottom of that the law that superfluous unspecified Nazir funds are used for voluntary communal offerings is an oral law. Amar halacha ben Nazir. Rabbi Yochanan said above that this halacha concerning a Nazir, that if you have unspecified funds, it could be used for voluntary karbanis. That is specific to a Nazir. Besuleka, are there no more instances of extra unspecified funds that share this law? Aiva hatanya, ushar chayav kinish b'Torah, and anyone else obligated by the Torah to sacrifice pairs of birds, which by the way is four different people. I think it's a zav, a zava, a mitzora, and then also maybe someone
Woman who gave birth.
Oh, a woman who gave birth. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have 4 cases where someone else is obligated by the Torah to bring a karban, a pair of birds. It says kinin, shluach hakan. The word nest is the word that we use for birds. Shefrishu mois lekinehem, who set aside money for their birds, right? The Mitzayra says, the zava. Do you want to say something?
No.
Does it look like you want to say something?
No, I was actually thinking about what you're about to say.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so Shefrisha Mais Lekneim, they set aside money for their birds. The law is that if he wishes to use that money to bring an animal as a chatas, he may do so. He's leveling up, right? Because normally you have to bring birds. And in some of those cases, if you're poor, you bring birds. If you set the money aside and then you became wealthy, you can then bring a chatas. It's not specific to the birds. But that's not why we're bringing this. I'm just giving you a little bit of color commentary.
Yeah.
Oilas behema yavi, and if he wishes to use the money to bring an animal as an oila, he may do so. You're allowed to level up.
Sorry, these types of birds, what type of carbon is this? Is it chatas? Is it an ola?
I think it's multiple. It's both.
So there are basically some that are obligatory and some that could potentially be an adavas.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, one is a chatas and one is an ola. One bird is a chatas, one is an ola. So he sets aside the money, and then all of a sudden, boom, let's say in one of the cases, he gets rich. So can he level up and bring a chatas? Yes, he can do it for the chatas, he can do it for the ola. He's allowed to bring behema, mesa hayulai maisa sumin. Oh, shoot, I didn't say Berchas Torah. Hold on, guys.
No, neither did I.
Berchas Torah has been said. Okay, so in those cases, he can level up. Meis v'hayulai maisa sumin. If he died and he had these unspecified funds for the birds, right? Mm-hmm. But we don't know which one it is. Yiplul and Adava. They go for voluntary communal offerings, even though the person's obligation included a chatas. Clearly, a Nazir is not the only one whose superfluous unspecified funds goes towards communal ola offerings. Why then does Rabbi Yochanan stress that the law was stated concerning a Nazir? This halacha l'maisha v'sinai. And for the Gemara, Tana Nazir chayvin kinin damule. The halacha l'maisha v'sinai was taught explicitly in regards to Nazir, and by the way, it refers to all those obligated to bring sacrifice birds as well, which resemble it.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
I don't recall them birds by Nazir.
No, it's not. It's nothing to do with birds by the Nazir. Okay. By the Nazir, it's just the unspecified funds.
Part, but that's funny. That's like Tana Nazir b'chayav kinin de damulai. Why would we think the birds is what we are resembling? Or is it just saying anything that has the unspecified funds, and that's the dimion? The keenan part is what's throwing me off here. Why are we comparing it to birds specifically?
No, I think it's the unspecified funds which apply by birds. And all those obligated to sacrifice birds as well, which resemble it. I think the part that resemble it is the fact that you have unspecified funds.
Fair.
Oh, and number 6, they resemble the case of Nazirs that they must bring both a chatas and a ola. That's
makes
the
sense.
similarity,
Okay.
not
Right,
the unspecified.
right, right.
But in both cases, you have unspecified funds.
I mean, we also already brought a case in the last Amud of a dimion of unspecified funds. What was that case? One was funds and one was just. It really was the same. It was just if he actually set aside the carbon or not already. Okay, never mind.
Blapuke mehadetanya, and the mention of Nazir explicitly. Why do we say Nazir explicitly? Just say everything to exclude that which was taught in the following brisa. Misha hayu mechuyev chatas. If someone was obligated to offer chatas, va'amar harei ola, and he declared, "It is hereby incumbent upon me to bring an ola." V'hifresh, he took it upon himself. In addition, v'hifresh mois va'amar harei elu leichavasi, and he set aside money and declared, "These funds are hereby designated for my obligation." Ratza lahavi ben chatas behema layavi. The law is that if he wanted to use that money to bring as an animal as a chatas, he may not do so. Olas behema layavi, and if he wanted to use that money to bring an animal as an ola, he may not do so, right? Because he combined a chiyuv of a chatas together with the money of an ola, but he didn't specify the two. So in that case, he's not allowed to bring it for either. Meis v'hayulay ma'isasum, and if he died and he had these unspecified funds, yechul yamamelch, we can't do anything with them. They go to the Dead Sea. So that's why Rabbi Yochanan had to say that it was a case explicitly taught by Nazir to exclude this case in which you would think, oh, he had the unspecified funds, so they can actually go towards an island. No. In this case, when you have a chiyuv and you bring upon yourself a voluntary ola, and you still don't know what to do with the money, in that case, the unspecified funds must be destroyed. And if you look at note 13, the Halacha L'Moshe Sinai teaches that the superfluous unspecified funds is only a case in which the chatas and the oila came about through a specific obligation.
A single obligation.
Yeah, here he took upon himself the oila, beautiful, kol hakavod, but specify your funds.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Isn't it interesting when you know, like, I did this yesterday, so, like, you see that I'm a little bit more fluent?
Yeah, 100%.
Like Rebelli Stefanski, when he gives the shir, like, he already knows this cold. Like, he did it like 3-4 times. Mm-hmm. It's just a game changer.
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, you don't need much more. Yeah, exactly. Totally see it.
Okay. The Mishnah above distinguished, I like this part also from the Gemara. The Mishnah above distinguished between unspecified funds and specified funds. But what is meant by specified, right? Ravashi, Amar Ravashi, Hod Amart Mefarshin Loi. Regarding that which you say the superfluous specified funds are not used for voluntary oila offerings, do not say that specified funds are only.
That's what I thought it meant.
Where it says, these are for my chatas, these are for my oila, and these are for my shlamim. Like, you're very specific. Don't say it's only when you're very specific. Rather, even if he declared, these are for my chatas, my oila, and my shlamim, without saying the words, these, they are considered specified funds. Note 14. Specifying funds does not just mean to designate separate funds for each of the 3 requisite sacrifices. Hold on, I have to sneeze. Gesundheit, thank you.
Bless you.
Rather, even if one does not specify which funds are for which sacrifice, naming the sacrifices for which the total funds are intended suffices to render the money specified funds. So even if you say, this pile over here is for my chatas, my ola, my shlamim, even though you didn't specify the actual monies being for a specific carbon, but you classified it verbally by saying, this pile, these are for my chatas, ola, and shlamim, that's enough to render it with specificity.
Weird. But how do you know how much goes where? I guess you have 3 piles?
According to Ravashi, the special halacha regarding unspecified funds was set only for funds that were completely unspecified, such as where he declared, these funds are for my obligation, or these funds are for my sacrifices, without naming the individual sacrifices.
And honestly, that's what I would have. Well, yeah.
Wait until you hear wait until what other people think. Yeah.
Okay.
Ravashi, he said no, even more. Don't say that the funds are not specified until he declares, these are for my chatas, my ola, and my shlamim, meaning what we just said at the end.
Okay.
Don't say that's only time it could. That's the lowest you can go in terms of lack of specificity.
Oh, no.
And even if he says these are for my obligations,
Oh, gosh.
they are considered specified funds. These are for my obligation.
What?
Let me ask you a question.
Then what is
Good. That was my question yesterday, and there's a note on the bottom when he says these are for my sacrifices, where he doesn't say the word chayvasi, the chatas.
He's not saying because the chayva is they're all three are the chayva.
No.
At this stage, when he's a Nazir, he's going to have a chiyuv to bring a chatas, a chiyuv to bring an eila, a chiyuv to bring a shlamim. Now, a chatas can only be a chiyuv, but at this stage, it's only like
Read 15.
Okay.
Out loud.
I'll read it. According to the second version, even when one does not name the sacrifices for which the money is intended, it can be still considered specified funds if he declared the funds to be lechayvasi. This is because the term lechayvasi, obligation, is taken as a reference to chatas, since a chatas can only be brought as a result of obligation, never voluntarily. His explicit reference as obligation makes the designation be viewed as containing an explicit reference to chatas, and accordingly, the chatas funds are considered specified. Once the chatas has been satisfied, the funds as a whole are no longer subject to the special halacha regarding unspecified funds. They cannot be used for a communal oila. According to this version of Rav Ashi, the unspecified funds to which halacha refers are only where the person declared these are for my sacrifices.
Unspecified!
Okay. Right. All right.
It's gishmak. Be honest with me. You're happy we went back to learn this Ahmed over here.
If you would have asked me like 10 days ago, would you be happy to learn about funds specified for chatas or an il sham? I'd be like, what? Chatas? What's a chatas? What's a sham? We got it so well. Like, we learned, we went to notes, we understand what a shlam is for, chatas for. And to the point where it's interesting. Like, I enjoyed that daf.
Yeah.
You enjoyed that daf.
Yeah.
We're understanding what moistumin for Russian.
Yeah.
When you specify, I like it.
Yeah. Okay, now we're on the bottom of Chav Vav Amud Aleph. Amar Rabba.
I'm saying the geschmackness comes from Chavrusa Daf. You would have done that. You think if you would have done this by yourself?
No. I would never have made it this far.
This is where you drop out.
I would.
The dropout rate of Nazir after
so?
Daf 20, you know?
I would have fallen off a while ago. Because I would have missed. There were some dafim I would not have gotten through, and then I would just.
Yeah.
And part of what's keeping me going is a flaw. It's the perfection.
I know.
We haven't had a day where we missed. But even if we have a day, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
We're going to move on.
All right.
Amar Rava, as we only have 22 minutes to get through 3 amudim, but they're short. Amar Rava, Hada Amran Ma'is Asumin Yipluna Dava. Regarding that which we said that unspecified funds go for voluntary communal offerings, Imnaflat Mechatas Bimnean Harayan Kamafarashin. The law is that if the money for the chatas was separated from them, they are considered specified funds. If the Nazir sets aside unspecified funds for his Nazir sacrifices and later designates some of the money for his chatas, then the remaining money is reserved only for his shlamim and ola offerings, but contains no chatas money. Therefore, the remaining money is not governed by the law that superfluous unspecified funds go for voluntary ola offerings. Lechel regarding unspecified funds was stated only regard to unspecified funds which include money intended for a chatas. Thus, if the Nazir dies, for example, before offering his concluding sacrifices, this money is treated as specified funds. Half is used for voluntary ola and half is used for voluntary shlamim, while the money which he separated for his chatas goes to the Dead Sea. Okay, so Rava just said that if you end up taking money, you had unspecified, but if you say this part of the money is for a chatas, that is enough to create specificity.
Right.
That's really what we want.
But then the interesting thing is, it's not like, fine, it creates a specificity on the chatas part, and then and also on the el and the shamim. But el and the shamim could always be brought as voluntary sacrifices. So it's very similar to if you would have just had unspecified funds. You're going to use this. You're going to do with it the same thing. You're going to buy elos and shamim.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Not really, but
All right.
I don't want to get confused.
Okay, yeah.
Also,
fine.
you're smarter than me, so like.
I am.
Yeah. So
You have
like.
a Kosher Money podcast.
I just ask questions.
You know, it's a big strength. how to ask
I didn't
questions.
say I'm not skilled. I just say Tanya Kavsei de Rava. A brisa supports the view of Rava. If a Nazir designated funds by declaring these funds are for my chatas, and the remainder are for the remainder of my Nazir sacrifices, and he died before purchasing the animals for his concluding sacrifices, why is it going to? Oh, because they can't actually be brought. Okay, and from the remainder, half he spends on an oil and half on the shlamim. That's exactly how the Rush explained Rabbah. And one commits me'ila only by misusing all of the funds. But one does not commit me'ila by using only part of the funds. We'll look at note 3 in a second. It is clear from this that since the chatas funds are not part of the unspecified funds, the latter are not treated as unspecified funds, and we don't have the halacha l'maisha mesinai, and you can bring the half he spends on all and half he spends. Oh, voluntary communal funds. Okay.
No, there's no me'ila because half of those funds are for the shlamim, which does not have me'ila, right? We said Ayla would have me'ila. Okay, fine.
Ola would have me'ila, and shlamim
yeah, because
is
the Ayla has to
voluntary.
end up bringing. Remember, we said something that's brought up. Shlamim, you're allowed to use it. You're allowed to eat from the karbanas, so that's why there's no me'ila.
When he spends half on the oila and half on the shlamim, those are communal offerings, no? I guess the halacha l'maisha mesine is really teaching you what to do with the chatas money.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
The chatas going to the Dead Sea if it's specified.
Yeah.
And if it's unspecified, what do you do with the chatas money?
If it's unspecified,
Yeah.
well, then it's unspecified. So it's not chatas money.
Oh, right. Okay.
Then it's just like all of the things. So if there's a bunch of karbanas all mixed in,
You could bring in all the money.
you could bring all for Nadavis.
So, and the me'ila is only...
So me'ila, we remember discussed which of the three karbanas has me'ila.
Yeah.
So the way to remember is well, shlamim doesn't have me'ila because you're allowed to eat. The whole shlamim is allowed to be eaten. And then anything that's going to be brought as a karban has me'ila. Other than that. So
if you're going to misuse part of it, it could be that part
was the shlamim, and therefore there's no me'ila. But if you use all of it, since part of that would have been an ayla, which that money should have been used to bring kachay kachem, which includes an ayla, then you're going to be considered having mal. I think note 3 does go into it if you want to read it.
One commits me'ila on an unspecified portion of this money, the remainder that was designated for the shlamim only by using them all of that remainder.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for this is that the funds set aside for a shlam are not subject to penalty for me'ila. However, funds set aside for purchase of an oil are subject to loss of me'ila. Since half the money in question is designated for shlam, liability for me'ila only suits the person who uses more than half the money, since he has certainly misused designated for the oila. Okay. Thus, the statement that he commits me'ila only by using all the funds is not meant literally. It means misuse of a majority of the funds. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is clear from this that since the chatas funds are not part of the unspecified funds, the latter are not treated as unspecified funds. Rava said that unspecified funds go for voluntary communal offerings. The law is that if the money for the chatas was separate from them, they're considered specified funds. Over here, the chatas was separated, so then the latter are not treated as unspecified funds. The fact that you have to do half on the oila and half on the shlamim, and it's not for just Hold
on, Rava said...
How is that a riot?
Yeah, Rava said that it would be considered specified funds, right?
The remaining money, right?
It is specified. And maybe the right is because you see that you're moil if you use all of them. There's me'ila if you use all of them.
Oh, you can't have me'ila. You can't have me'ila in a case where it's specified. Where it's not specified.
Exactly, because you could have used that all for shlam.
Voluntary communal offerings. So the fact that you're over on me'ila, if you do a majority, goes to show that when you have specificity, you are not allowed to touch it. So we see here that once you separate the chatas from them, they're considered specified, and here in this case they're considered specified. Okay, got it. Shkoyach Rabbi Binyomin. I gave you your smicha back.
Oh, thank you.
The Brisa now explains the ruling in a case where the oila was specified rather than the chatas. If the Nazir designated funds as follows: these are from my oila, and the remainder are for the remainder of my Nazir sacrifices, and he died before purchasing his sacrifices, to make oila yaviu oila. With the money for the oila, they bring an oila. Umaylin bahen, and one commits me'ila by using it, right? It's an oila money. Bashar yiplu nadaba, and the remainder of the money, which was assigned for the chatas and the shlam offerings, should go for voluntary communal offerings. Umaylin bechulin, and one commits me'ila only by misusing all of the funds. Ve'ein moylin b'miktasam, one does not me'ila by using only part of the funds. Of the unspecified funds, only those destined for the chatas are subject to me'ila penalty, not those destined for the shlamim, since there's no me'ila for the shlamim as explained above. Therefore, one does not commit me'ila on the unspecified funds unless he misuses more than half of them, in which case he has certainly misused money designated for the chatas. However, if he misused just half or less, the misused portion of the unspecified fund money might be the part intended for the shlamim, which is not subject to the laws of me'ila. He's therefore exempt from the me'ila penalty. Okay. This ruling is difficult to understand. The chatas money is subject to me'ila not because it is destined to be used for chatas, because of original. Okay, no, I'm not.
Yeah, I know, right? Because I actually got it, so it's like it's difficult to understand.
Yeah, no, I'm not
not holding there yet. Maybe on the next.
I didn't have that question. Maybe on the next round.
Yeah.
Okay, so
what is it called? The next machzor.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a good term to know. Yeah.
So if the Nazir designated fund, if he says, okay, these are for my oila, and the remainder are for the remainder of the Nazir sacrifices, and he dies, I can understand why the money, the oila you bring for the oila, because that was what he specified.
Mm-hmm. Now you have two other types of karbanos left in this unspecified fund of money. Morning. One is the shlamim, and one is the chatas.
Right.
So, if you're only moaning a little bit,
right,
then there's no me'ila. So there's no problem, because you could say that he was misusing the shlamim part. He did all of it. That means he had to partly misusing the chatas.
Right.
As well.
Okay. Just as a person can set aside money for his sacrifices, so too he can set aside saleable items, including animals, with the intention that the proceeds from their sale be used for the purchase of his sacrifices. The discussion that follows examines the relationship between the type of object designated and the classification of the designated item as specified or unspecified. Amar Rav Huna Marav, Lo shanu ela mois. They did not teach our Mishnah that superfluous unspecified funds go for communal ola offerings, except in regards to money or its equivalent, al behema. But if someone set aside an animal for the purpose of financing his Nazir sacrifices, meaning he's not going to shech that animal, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to sell that animal and use the proceeds from that sale to finance his karbanis. Harehi k'mefareshas. It is as if it has been specified, and if it becomes superfluous, the Nazir dies, the animal is left to die, may not be used to finance any sacrifices. The Gemara qualifies Rav. You got Rav's ruling, and in the process makes clear its basis. Amar Rav Nachman, Hada Amri Behema Harehi k'mefareshas. That which they said that an animal designated in a non-specific fashion is treated as if it has been specified. Lo shanu ela tamima. This that they said that an animal designated in a non-specific fashion is treated as if it has been specified. Lo shanu ela tamima. They said it only regards to an unblemished animal which cannot be sold, and it is thus not considered equivalent to money. Meaning it's good for a carbon.
So you're going to use that. So basically, since you'll be using that as the carbon, it's considered more specified. Yeah.
Hold on, it's an unblemished animal, so it's pure. It's good.
Yeah, you could bring it as a carbon. Right, so that's why
why can't it be sold? You're saying after he dies it can't be sold?
Why can't an unblemished animal in general be sold?
I'm gonna have to go through.
There seems to be a specific halachas you got to note here.
We might have to.
You might have to go to note 8. Key point in the discussions that follow is that valuables that cannot readily be converted into cash, e-liquid, are not considered like money relative to the special atah for unspecified funds, i.e. the halacha, from which this law derives, specifies money, and thus refers only to money or valuables similar to money. Therefore, if one should set aside difficult to convert items as a fund for his sacrifices and then dies, thereby rendering the fund superfluous, the fund does not go for communal offerings. Rather, the items making up the fund are treated as specified funds. Since they contain superfluous chatas funds and the chatas part of the fund cannot be identified, the entire fund must be destroyed. Does that make sense?
So if he set aside something difficult and then he dies, it renders the fund superfluous, extra. Doesn't go for communal because it is specified?
Yes, it's considered as specified.
Okay.
So there's certain types of items that get even if it's an unspecified fund, it gets the status of specified.
Mm-hmm.
When the Gemara will speak in the coming discussions of various kinds of valuables being treated like specified funds, even though they were designated without any specification, it is because, lacking the cash-like quality of money, they are not eligible for the leniency taught by the halacha for unspecified funds. So far I get this introduction. Now let's go and see what, these specified interesting cases are.
When the Gemara will speak in the coming of various kinds of valuables being treated like specified funds, even though they were designated with any specifications, because lacking the cash-like quality of money, they are eligible for the leniency taught by the halacha for unspecified funds. So they are specified, but they don't have the leniency of money.
They're not specified. I'm saying, in this case...
Oh, they're not specified funds, but they do have the...
They will get a special specified status.
Specialized status, but not enough for it to be... if the guy dies, that they go...
No, they'll have to be that if it's an animal that he set, even though he didn't want this animal to become the carbon, he just wanted he wanted to be able to set money. But instead of setting money, he set his farm shrunk, or his car, or his animal, right? As collateral, basically. He's choosing collateral. Happens to be he chose an animal, which is why this case is a little different.
So he chose an animal, so it's as if he designated it to be chatas.
Close, right.
But if he dies, normally with money, we say that specified money you gotta throw away.
Gotta throw away if it's a chatas, right?
And with this behemoth,
But this was unspecified.
we just said it was specified.
No, it was let's see what the Gemara said. What did he say here?
Specified. Because it was, what happened was because they designate the 3 different pipes, and if it's a behema, then all of a sudden it gets specified.
There's a special status here that he just said, I want to set this animal towards my karbanas. Without specifying if it's chatas shalom oil. We're saying it's as if he specified that this should be for an chatas.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that's what we're saying. Even though he said it generally, it's as if he specified.
Okay.
And therefore, what happens when you specify? If the guy dies, you have to let it die, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, let's go to note 10. The law is the same regardless of whether he set aside a single animal or several. However, if he set aside precisely the 3 animals needed for a Nazir sacrifices, right, namely a male lamb, female lamb, and ram, even though he did not articulate their individual designations, the male lamb is assumed to be for an Ella, the female lamb for the chatas, and the ram for the shlamim. Funa, however, refers to animals that are unsuitable themselves for the Nazir's concluding sacrifices. So basically, he speaks in a case, for example, where the Nazir set aside 3 cows with which to finance his offerings. Okay. So now, note 11. Even though, so we said that it's as if it's specified, right? Even though the Nazir did not specify his Nazir sacrifices when designating the animals, they are treated like specified funds, and they are not subject to the special leniency taught for unspecified funds. Accordingly, their chatas component cannot be used for any sacrifice and must be destroyed. However, the chatas component cannot be identified. Thus, the animals as a whole must be treated as a mixture of specified chatas, oila, and shlamim funds. Just so you understand that again. Okay. Right. Anytime you have a chatas component, right? Chatas component always has to be destroyed, but it's mixed in here. You don't know out of these 3 cows, it's not like you could specify a cow because a cow can't be brought for a carbon. But the law for such a mixture is that the entire mixture must be destroyed because the forbidden chatas funds cannot be separated out. Accordingly, these animals are left to die and cannot be used to finance any sacrifices. Now let's hear the reason. Is it starting to?
Yeah.
Okay. The reason animals are treated
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Line 3 of note 11, where it says the special leniency taught for unspecified funds. Which special leniency is that? That it can go towards communal Ola offerings? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
You
Okay.
answered your own question.
Yeah. I'm Rav Nachman.
Wait, can I read? This is actually. I'm
Oh,
interested.
yeah.
The
Go
reason,
ahead. The reason. Yeah. Sorry. Go
The
ahead.
reason animals are treated like specified funds is that the halacha mashmisina that teaches the leniencies for unspecified funds applies only to money or its equivalent. Animals fit for sacrifice, however, cannot be redeemed once they have been consecrated, even though they are not fit for the particular sacrifice for which their value has been designated. They must await a blemish before they can be redeemed. In their unblemished state, therefore, they cannot be converted to cash, and they are not considered money. So I'm assuming then a cow is able to be brought on the mizbeach, but not as a Nazir's sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, he could be brought as another sacrifice?
Yeah, I think that's it has to be that case. Otherwise, then it's like cash. Because then it's just like your car.
Oh, okay.
You could sell it, right?
Okay.
The fact that it's an animal that is fit for a sacrifice, but not for this particular sacrifice.
What does Rav Nachman say?
Okay. Hold on a second. I just would also like to see. Oh, Rav Nachman. We didn't do that yet. Okay. Rav Nachman, had amri behema harehi k'mefareshes, that which they said that an animal designated in a non-specific fashion is treated as if it has been specified. Leishanu el tamima. It's only if it's an unblemished animal, which cannot be sold and is thus not considered equivalent to money. Anything that can be sold is basically
So
liquid.
if he takes Betsy the cow, and Betsy the cow is a huge blemish, that can be easily sold.
Right? And therefore,
I mean, the other one can also be easily sold, right?
you're not,
But you're not allowed
I
to.
think there's like certain halachas against it. Yeah. That's note 12, first sentence.
Oh, yeah.
As explained in the previous note, an unblemished animal fit for sacrifice, whether it's a sheep, a goat, a cow, that has been designated for a sacrifice, even one for which it is not fit, cannot be redeemed until it develops a blemish.
So that's why it can't be sold,
Exactly.
because the guy can't do anything with it.
Exactly.
It's fair for something else. But a blemished animal has value to other people, and then that one has a little bit of a cash equivalent.
Yeah.
So in that case, if someone separates, it says, okay, this unblemished cow is set aside for my obligations. That unblemished cow is set aside, then it has a cash equivalent, and therefore we consider it as to be unspecified. If he dies, then that cow can be used for voluntary communal offerings.
Exactly.
Amazing. Okay. The Gemara now lists other objects of value that are not considered the equivalent of money. Aval naskaloi, however, an ingot of metal is not treated as an unspecified funds. It is not subject to the law of unspecified funds because it is not readily convertible into cash. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, why? 14. Metal ingots, masses of metal cast in convenient form for remelting and shaping, were used as barter for animals, but were sold for cash only after a time-consuming assessment. Therefore, ingots are not considered equivalent to money and are not included in the law for unspecified funds. If someone sets aside some ingots, declaring simply these ingots are from Nazir sacrifices, and he then died, they would be treated like specified funds and would have to be destroyed. So a lack of specificity, you need to have quick cash capability in order to
Basically,
be
like those gold
unspecified.
bricks, right? That's how I think
Right,
about it.
quick. Oh, gold bricks are easy to...
No, I'm saying that's an ingot. That is what a naska is. Right? It's a metal bar,
Okay.
right?
Bar Yitzchak, but we have to, it takes time. It takes like 4 hours, let's say, to inspect it, to see how much it's worth.
Right.
Oh, it's not quick cash? Then it's specified.
Right.
But
14 carat.
Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, Afilu naska, even an ingot is treated as an unspecified funds. Aval svar shall clearest light, but not a stack of building beams. 15. Menachem Bar Yitzchak disputes the contention that the conversion of ingots into cash is time-consuming. On the contrary, they're easily sold for cash. Or even if their conversion into cash is time-consuming, they're readily bartered for animals, and this gives them the character of cash, at least in regards to the purchase of animals.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Accordingly, he classifies ingots
As equivalent to money.
and therefore it includes them under the law for unspecified funds. If the ingots set aside from the others concluding sacrifice become superfluous, they are used for voluntary communal offerings because they are considered unspecified. But not a stack of building beams. If the Nazir had set aside building beams intended to use their proceeds to finance his concluding sacrifices, why concluding? He didn't do any, but okay. The beams are treated as specified funds since they are not subject to the law of unspecified funds because they don't have cash equivalent. Building beams are not equivalent to cash since they are desired only by someone in need of building materials. They're not readily sold nor readily bartered. Accordingly, you have to find a construction guy.
Yeah.
Accordingly, they're not covered by the law for unspecified funds, which applies only to money or its equivalent. When the beams become superfluous, they're treated like specified funds and must be destroyed.
I feel like this is like it's great you say this to go Gemara because it's talking about money and like what is money, and it's it's only something that can easily be transferred. Someone wants it. It's like, oh, but I have my used car. It works really well. Yeah, but if you're not in the market for a used car right now, it's not really worth much. You'll see all these people posting on these chats. Yeah. Hey, I have a couch in good condition. 300 best offer. No one asks. Because guess what? It's annoying to pick it up.
Right.
They don't know if it has a hole in the back.
Right.
Maybe it has bed bugs.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So I think it's interesting. You should have this in your kosher money.
Yeah, this is real kosher money. I'm just gonna 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. So now, Rav Shimi Bar Ashi challenges the assumption that the law of unspecified funds applies only to money and valuables easily converted to money. Amar le Rav Shimi Bar Ashi la Rav Papa. Rav Shimi Bar Ashi said to Rav Papa, "Ma'it Tamai de Rabbanan." What is the reasoning of the Rabbanan, the Amoraim above, Rav Huna, Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, that you need easy conversion? The Amri Ma'is v'lei behim v'lei naska, because they say money but not animals and not ingots.
Did I ever tell you
Ma'is?
No, it's fine. Real
Ma'is v'lei svara, money but not beams. Elamiata ma'is v'lei eifes. Now, if so, say also money but not birds. If someone owed a pair of sacrifices and he set aside birds for his obligation without specifying which was the and which was the chatas, then if he dies, the birds should not be sacrificed as voluntary communal offerings, but should be left to die. This is because once birds have been designated as sacred, they can never be redeemed, even if they develop a blemish. The law of blemish and redemption does not apply to the birds. Therefore, they are therefore like the animals mentioned above by Rav Huna, which are not considered to be like money, and are thus the subject to the law of unspecified funds. Does that mean that they're not quick to convert into cash?
Is that what
But those birds that he set aside are the actual karbanos. We're not talking about. We're not in those cases of the beam and the gold and the behemoth. Those
even that behemoth case is a behemoth that you can't use.
Right. So like to say money but not birds. Oh, because birds for whatever reason.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And maybe that's gonna be the answer. I don't know.
And also we said that this halacha l'meishim Sinai is for birds. It's for money. Maybe he's saying like it should just be money, not birds. The halacha l'meishim Sinai should not be birds. But should be left to die. This is because once birds have been designated as sacred, they can never be redeemed, even if they develop a blemish. The law of blemish or redemption does not apply to birds. They are therefore like the animals mentioned above, which are not considered to be like money. Okay, he wants to say birds are not like money. We'll figure out, see what the answer is. I mean, if you say that this is indeed so, that superfluous, unspecified birds are indeed destroyed, Elahadam Rechizda, how you account for Rechizda, in Hikinin Misbrashes, Elihi Belikhas, Balam Ibasias Kain. Pairs of birds are not specified except through the selection of the owners or the action of the Kayan. Rav Chizda said that pairs of birds are not specified except through the selection. Oh, you want to say, even if you will say that the birds are taka unspecified,
But
and they'll get destroyed.
So birds have to have this thing where you designate this pair of birds. One is the oil and the other is the chatas. The owner can designate the chatas and the oil at the time of their purchase, or in the absence of that designation by the owner, the Kohen decides which bird is for the sacrifice at the time of the sacrifice. So, why is the Kohen's selection effective where the owner did not designate the birds specifically? It is only money that we have learned from Melcham Leshmi that can be considered unspecified. But items that are not like money, in this case sacrificial birds, treated as though they were are treated as though they were specified, even if they were set aside without specification. But since we cannot determine which bird is specified for which offering, how can the Kohen choose one for the ol and the other for the chatas and sacrifice the birds?
There's like multiple steps here, right? We wanted to say that the Rabbanan say money but not animals and ingots, money but not beams. I say money but not birds. Only money is cash, and cash is cash, but not birds. And if you will indeed say so, that you're right, birds are indeed destroyed, then that can't be, because Rav Chisda said pairs of birds are not specified except through the selection of the owners or the action of the kohen. If you say birds are unspecified, then how can the kohen, birds of pairs are not specified, establish the selection of owners of the action of the kohen? How can the kohen go ahead and if you're going to say that it's unspecified, birds are unspecified, how does a kohen come to help you? How can the kohen choose one for the oila and the other for the chatas and sacrifice the birds? They're unspecified. If you're going to say money but not birds, and the birds have to stay unspecified and they're destroyed, right? He wants to come along and he put us into this problem. He's saying, oh, this and this and this and this. Say also birds should be considered unspecified. Why are you coming along and saying birds are like money? Okay, fine. So you want to say birds are unspecified and they should be destroyed? Then how are you gonna answer Rav Chisda? Rav Chisda says that the kohen has the ability to
basically decide which one is
specified and which one's not.
And if it's the case that it's like you don't have this leniency to choose, then how is the kohen allowed to choose?
Right. Why is the kohen's selection effective when the owner did not designate the bird specifically? It is only money that we have learned from Melech El-Mesh Sinai that considered. And these items are not like money. In this case, the sacrificial birds are treated as though they were specified, even if they were set aside without specification. But since we cannot determine which bird is specified, which offering, how can the kohen choose one for the oil and one for the chatas? Or Papa, Amalei or Papa.
I gotta stop here. Gotta go pick up my kids.
10 o'clock, 5 minutes. Oh, you have to go, right?
Because I have to get my kids.
Yeah. Okay.
Both people come late anyway.
Comes along or Papa counters with proof of his own. Amalei or Papa Setem, Tamech. But according to your reasoning, that animals and birds are considered unspecified. The point of Rishimi's argument is to demonstrate that bird pairs can be considered unspecified, and therefore that the halacha is not restricted to money and money-like valuables. Right, he wanted to say, because you can't say it's just money and not birds, because then it wouldn't work with what Rav Chisda is saying, so it must be money and birds. But according to reason that animals and birds are considered unspecified, how do you explain that which we learned in the Mishnah? If a Nazir bought 3 animals for concluding sacrifices and did not specify which was the oila and which was the chatas and the shlamim, Hari l'chatas tikrav chatas, and the one fits for the chatas, namely the female lamb is offered as a chatas. La'ila tikrav oila, the one fit for the oila, namely the male lamb is offered as an oila. L'shlam tikrav shlam, and the one fit for shlam, namely the ram is offered as shlamim. Amai, why should this be so? Amar to behema lav k'mefarshas dami. You have just said that animals that were not specified at the time of the designation are not treated as specified. So if you want to say money and birds are considered unspecified, why in this case, where he brought them and didn't specify, why over here do we say that You have just said that animals that were not specified at the time of the designation are not treated as specified. If so, how are these animals sacrificed without being specifically designated? Right? You just said that only by money and birds do we consider them unspecified. Over here, you have unspecified animals, and there. So the point of Hashem is arguing that bird pairs can be considered unspecified, and therefore the halacha is not restricted to money and valuables. I don't understand the question, because why over here, if a Nazir brought 3 ounces for a concluding sacrifice and did not specify, we go ahead and bring them.
Takes a minute.
And the 1/5 of the Shalom is offered Shalom. Why should this be so? You just said that animals that were not specified at the time of the designation are not treated as specified.
But you got us into a habit.
According to your reasoning, the animals and birds are considered unspecified. Right. Okay, so why over here? I didn't realize that he was also means that animals and birds. Okay, so it's both. Okay, so by animals, why over here? If they're unspecified, why can we go ahead and treat them as specified? I think he's going to answer that animals are different, right? Okay, let's see. Amar lei, Hasan v'lakach v'asam archon. There, in the case of the pairs of the birds, the Torah said he shall take, and he, the kohen, shall make. The pasuk says, if her means do not suffice for a lamb, then she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one for an olah and one for a chatas. From this, we see that the owner can specify the bird's designations at the time he takes them. And the next pasuk says, at a different point, and the kohen shall make them, one for a chatas and one for an olah, and the kohen shall atone for him before Hashem for this issue. From this, we see that a kohen's choice when performing the service can also determine which bird goes for which sacrifice. From this, we learn that the sacrificial designation of the birds can be determined either through the selection of the owners or the action of the kohen. Since the kohen is granted the power to determine the designation of the birds at the time of their offering, it is clear that prior determination of the birds are unspecified. But here too, in the case of Nazir's concluding sacrifices, can you say that one for the chatas can be sacrificed as an olah? The animal suitable for the chatas is not suitable for any other concluding sacrifices. Therefore, simply designated to be part of the concluding is equivalent to specifying it as a chatas. This is a female that is a male. Okay, so we're going to have to really do this over. We're going to start from Shemi Bar Ashi and try to better understand this Gemara.